If you decide to take a long and exciting trip from the north, if you go to the south or vice versa, hoping to drive all the way by car, then already at the planning stage you will understand that this is impossible. Now we will tell you how it happened and what is here the longest highway in the world. Dangerous smugglers and Indian tribes. The concept of creating a road connecting South America and North America originated in the 19th century. It was announced at the first Pan-American Conference, although then it was about railway tracks. However, the matter did not go further than conversations. In 1923, the idea to build a Pan-American highway appeared, and 2 years later it was decided to implement it. As a result, a network of roads was born, which entered the Guinness Book of Records as the longest automobile highway on our planet. But you need to understand its length, since the data differs from one source to another. If we talk about the total length of the Pan-American Highway with all its branches, then according to the boldest estimates, its length reaches 48,000 kilometers, which is more than the circumference of the equator. But if you count the distance along the shortest path from the northern to the southern point of the highway, you will have to drive a little more than 23,000 kilometers. To the Book of Records, Guinness also entered a different result, 24,140 kilometers. Since the path is measured by another diversion of the route and its final point, the South American city of Brazil. But whatever figure is not taken into account, in any case, this is the longest track in the world at the moment. In fact, the main part of the Pan-American Highway originates in the cold and harsh regions in Alaska. Starting point, the small village of Prudhoe Bay, where only about 2,000 people live. It was built next to the gas and oil field of the same name. The official beginning of the highway is located near the US-Mexico border. As for the final segment of the route, it is the southernmost city of the land of Ushuaia. It is incredible, but traveling along this road you can pass more than a dozen countries, almost all climatic zones and various ecological regions, as well as visit almost all South American capitals. The highway does not pass only through Belize and Tegucigalpa. But get in a car in Alaska and drive to, but only on the road, alas, it will not work, and there is a good reason for that. Perhaps the most amazing and interesting section of the Pan-American Highway, the Darien Gap. This is an area of impenetrable jungle measuring about 160 by 50 kilometers. It divides the longest highway in the world into two sections, with 87 kilometers between them. It is located on the territory of two countries, Panama and Colombia. It is not possible to drive through the Darien Gap in an ordinary car, and the path will not be easy on an SUV. Oddly enough, the easiest way is to walk. However, to call such a walk entertaining, the language does not turn, because the conquerors, the impassable jungle, is waiting for the Darien Gap. On average, the road takes from 10 to 15 days, it all depends on the route and the individual characteristics of travelers. Anyway, without the experience of such transitions, special training and no knowledge of the terrain, it is better not to go there. The idea of paving a road through the Darien Gap has been expressed more than once, but the implementation remains a big question. The territory is covered with selva and swamps, in which the construction of roads is extremely difficult. But despite this, back in the 1970s, the United States sponsored the development of the project, but then environmentalists opposed it. In their opinion, the construction of a highway will cause irreparable harm to nature. At the beginning of 1990, the discussion of the issue was returned, but again without success. This time, the United Nations was categorically against it. She was also worried about the possibility of environmental damage, since there are two national parks listed as a World Heritage Site on the territory of the Gap, UNESCO. Now there are other opponents of the idea of building a road. It is not liked by the local Indian tribes, who do not really want to be disturbed and are worried about the preservation of their original culture. Another possible problem related to the construction of the road is the increase in drug trafficking from Colombia. Now, everyone who is not ready to cross the Darienski Gap is on foot, uses the ferry. It runs between the cities of Panama and various Colombian ports such as Buenaventura and Cartagena. This is the only way to transfer cars and continue along the southern part of the Pan-American Highway. And it seems strange because the continents are connected, the Isthmus of Panama. It seems that nature itself overturned the bridge. But the Darien Gap forces us to use water transport. Although the Darien region is not very friendly, but people live here too. Representatives of two Indian tribes live on its territory, Kuna and Choco. Both tribes are very respectful of ancient traditions. For example, some Choco women still prefer to go topless and with fancy tattoos on their backs, as their ancestors did. Choco managed to survive in the difficult conditions of the Darien Gap thanks to the knowledge passed down from generation to generation about animals and plants, as well as waterways. Kuna also try to maintain the old way of life. In particular, they strictly forbid marriages with foreigners. This closeness has led to the fact that among the Kuns there is the largest percentage of albinos in the world, who are called moon children. It is interesting that matriarchy reigns among the Kuns. For example, a woman chooses her own husband, and after the wedding ceremony, he passes into her family. For many years, the Darien Gap has consistently attracted the attention of people who are looking for adventure, not afraid of dangers. At one time, many attempts were made to overcome it by car, but all of them ended in failure. The situation changed in the second half of the 20th century. The preparation of the expedition began in 1957, and it was possible to finish it only in 1960. According to the goal of the project called Trans-Darien expedition, its participants had to get to the Colombian capital Bogotá to attend the Pan-American Highway Congress. The start of the expedition was scheduled for February to storm the Darien Gap in the dry season. Two specially prepared SUV Gypsy J5 and Land Rover Defender were allocated for it. Since it was immediately clear that the cars would not pass without assistance, the expedition was supplemented by 8 participants who were entrusted with the construction of crossings and clearing the way in the midst of rich local vegetation. The transition through the Darien Gap took 4 months and 20 days. During this time, the team faced a lot of difficulties. The participants of the expedition had to conquer steep hills, cut their way through dense thickets with machetes, cross numerous rivers and streams. As a crossing over the reservoir, they often used the trunks of palm trees, both strong and flexible. In total, they built 125 temporary bridges. The climate also added problems. After all, in the tropical jungle and in the dry season, life is difficult to call comfortable. In addition, do not forget about the local inhabitants, poisonous insects and snakes. Fortunately, none of the team was seriously injured. The trip ended successfully. But this once again proved that only a few people are destined to travel from South America to North America by land. The inaccessibility of the Darien Gap also made it attractive for illegal migrants trying to get to Panama for further migration to more developed countries, and in particular to the United States. But it also attracted smugglers and the most famous rebel group in Latin America, Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. They control most of the area. A significant part of migrants risking their lives to overcome the Darien Gap. Immigrants from Haiti and Cuba, slightly less, come from Cameroon and the Congo, as well as Sri Lanka, India and Bangladesh. And in the spring in 2021, the UNICEF Children's Fund shared sad statistics. He reported a sharp increase in the number of children among illegal immigrants passing through the Darien Gap. If in 2017 there were only 2% of them, then in 2020 it has become 25%. While hardly anyone will argue that the Darienski Gap is a place that is not very pleasant for adults, and there is absolutely nothing for minors to do there. In the 21st century, when there are not so many truly wild corners left on our planet, the Darien Gap continues to be one of them. Of course, if you want, you can even find an excursion there, but with a guide you will only go through relatively civilized places, and it is unlikely that you will meet smugglers and other unpleasant persons who are outside the law. And until there is an urgent economic need, until environmentalists are ready to defend this region, as long as Indian tribes live there, a highway through the Darien Gap is unlikely to be built. Probably it is for the best. This is all, friends. Share videos, put likes, subscribe. See you soon.